with another, like I was saying, podcast. Very, very excited for this one. Excited because, I'm always ranting and raving about, sports and with friends and talking about, different things that happen in the sports world. And the last, I would say 7, 8 years, the Spurs haven't been relevant, and it's been very, very sad. That playoff basketball is something that I hold dearly to me and to my heart. And growing up playing basketball and watching the Spurs, constantly being in it. Always in the finals, Western Conference Finals, winning series after series, big shots, big games. Tim, Tony, Manu, David Robinson when I was really, really small. It's just an honor. And then Kawhi Leonard, then he leaves. He wins a championship with Toronto. It turns into a mess. But we're back. Very, very excited. Uh, Very, very, very happy. Big win yesterday by the Spurs, the young Spurs. And we'll get into that in a second. But just very excited that for the first time in since 2017, the Spurs are in the Western Conference Finals. But it's the first time that they really make some noise in the playoffs. In 2017, everybody thought they were going to beat the Warriors. The old Manu Ginobili. Tony Parker's hurt. Kawhi Leonard, is playing really, really well, but he gets hurt in the Houston series in the second round. Game 6, they play in Houston without, Kawhi Leonard, and they win by a lot. Jonathan Simmons had a big game. DeJounte Murray starting over Tony Parker, the injured Tony Parker who tore his quad muscle. Then they play, Golden State. First year with Kevin Durant. Of course, everybody thinks that the Warriors are going to win, and the Spurs are blowing them out. Kawhi Leonard gets hurt. Zaza Pachulia, who's banned from San Antonio, closes out, and there goes that. Spurs get swept. Warriors win back-to-back titles, and everybody believes, including myself, and all Spurs fans. You can ask half of San Antonio or South Texas or whoever's a Spurs fan that, you know, the Spurs would have won that series and would have ended up winning the championship versus the Cavs. Uh, I believe it was the first year, maybe without Kyrie Irving. If not, I don't remember. That's too far back from my memory. But, anyways, yesterday, so we get into the playoffs. We'll talk about yesterday right now. But yesterday was a big stepping stone for the Spurs. Again, the Portland series. Spurs win game 1. Wemby knocks himself out, lose game 2, and then in game 3 and game 4, the Spurs are down. Really, 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 really bad. Portland doing everything right, making all their shots, moving the ball well, hitting threes. And I'll tell you what, that young Portland team, they're going to be something. They have a lot of good pieces. Damian Lillard's coming back, so they should be good. But what I'll say is Portland, um, they were similar to the Spurs in the sense that they weren't ever in that moment or with that pressure. Denny Avdia was amazing, but it just wasn't enough. That the Spurs wrote that momentum that they had all year of fast offense, fast play, everything that's that goes with that, and it just ended up being too much for Portland, and it made me very, very, very happy that the Spurs came back in game 3, game 4, and then they end up winning the series in 5. So I had the lucky privilege of having an early birthday gift and going to see the Spurs in game 1 of the Minnesota series, a Fiesta game. And unfortunately, I sat in the section where there was yellow shirts, and I wanted either blue or pink. I went with my sister, my friend, and didn't go too well. And unfortunately, they was it was a heck of a game, but they lose, and that's one of the 3 losses that the Spurs have in the postseason, and I had to go to one of them, but it was okay. It was a heck of an experience. It was one of the best games I've ever been to. The atmosphere was unreal. It was emotional seeing San Antonio rally around such a young team that is going to be good for years to come. So Spurs end up getting through um, that series to go through the whole Wemby ejection thing, and they win in 6. A really good game. I had no doubt in my mind that the Spurs were going to win uh, you know this game, and sure enough, game 6, sorry, with the Timberwolves, and sure enough, they blow out the Timberwolves, and it just seemed like the Timberwolves were hesitant. Of course, not healthy with Anthony Edwards. Julius Randle, sorry to say, but he laid an egg. Didn't wasn't aggressive. Wasn't the Julius Randle that they traded for. And it's almost like everybody says, if only they had somebody that was 6'10" that could step out and shoot threes, that could guard Wemby. But well, they traded him to New York. So, but that's for another day. That's another conversation. But Now talking about Spurs winning, advancing, and playing game one yesterday. So game one yesterday, looking at the underdog app and Price Picks app and looking, like, well, what bet should I do? What should how should I go about this? What are the odds? So looking at the Spurs, they were plus 6.5. And for those that don't sports bet, that means that they can either lose, they can't lose by more than 7. So if they lose by 6 or less, you cover the spread, or if they win, you cover the spread. So meaning that you would win. So if they lose by 7 points or more, you would lose the bet, right? So I was like, that's ridiculous. So of course, me using the underdog app, I had to make a bet and do that. And all of a sudden, it gets to the point to where 30 minutes later, Aaron Fox is ruled out for game one. There was no panic, but I kind of understood, the spread at that point. I wasn't sure if the injury was listed and that spread came out or what the deal was, right? But just going from there, looking at that, I was like, well, we'll see how the Spurs come out. Dylan Harper has been sensational this postseason run in this playoffs, and he gets a start. So that made me very, very happy that he gets a start and he's able to showcase what he does, on a normal basis for us Spurs fans. So, game starts and somebody in my comments right now saying, "Is this astronaut talks?" I wouldn't say astronaut talks, but I would say alien talks. WEMBY yesterday was unbelievable, and I posted this on Facebook. So those of you that have me on Facebook will know that I'm a lifelong Spurs fan. I've thing even when they were losing, and our starting lineup had Trey Jones, Malachi Branham, Keldon Johnson. I forget his name. Um, I believe Nick Collison, or not Nick Collison, Zach Collins. I'm sorry, and yeah, and Jeremy Sohan or something like that. So, that's where it becomes an issue. Where it's like, man, like you're watching games that was the team that they had, and then now it's like they draft and little by little, it's okay they get Vassell, okay they get Keldon. They drafted Keldon first, and they drafted Vassell. It's like, okay, that's two good picks. Then of course they get lucky with Wemby winning the lottery. But somebody, Dylan Harper, the Mavericks passed up on him, but of course, Cooper Flag, that you can't pass up that pick. But Stephon Castle, 3 teams passed up on Stephon Castle, and those 3 teams, you ask them about their pick, more than likely they're going to want Stephon Castle back. So that's where an issue comes in, right? So they would have said I would have rather taken Stephon Castle at that point. But anyways, Stephon Castle doesn't, you know, doesn't get picked by those teams, falls to the Spurs, and then this past year it's Dylan Harper, and then it's everybody forgets Carter Bryant. Carter Bryant, um, drafted at number 14, incredible talent that he's going to be a perfect 3-and-D guy. That I feel if he's more comfortable. Yesterday he looked a little timid with the ball, but he knocked down a shot, played some good defense, and he's very tall. Has a long reach that can affect taller defenders and other defenders, or sorry, people on offense. And he's able to guard 1 through 5, I believe, maybe 2 through 5, but 1 through 5 is what most people would say. And we're also going to shout out Monty VR 324 in my comments. Thank you very much for being in the live and commenting and liking the video. Appreciate that very much. So, yeah. So yesterday, it's everybody talks about the Spurs and talks about their luck and stuff like that. Like Julian Champagny was let go for Mac McClung to be in the dunk contest by the Sixers. The Spurs picked him up. You look at all the other guys. That Kelly Olynyk was a big signing for the Spurs this offseason. Hasn't really played. He's a 1 year, $12 million guy that's playing in garbage minutes. Lindy Waters, who I think can really develop into a solid role player. He would remind me of maybe like a Patty Mills, in that 2014 season where he's coming off the bench, and in 2013 Patty Mills didn't play at all in the playoffs, and then 2014 he's a key contributor. I hope Lindy Waters has a good offseason and the Spurs retain him, to be able to do that. But like Bismack Biyombo is there as backup. Plumlee's there as a backup. And then we have, of course, the likes of Cornette, who they signed in free agency, and everybody else is drafted. The Spurs aren't out here signing big name free agents that, Luke Cornette, nobody wanted Luke Cornette. Nobody wanted him, and now he's with the Spurs and he's doing a good job. He did a good job all year. It's been a little difficult in the playoffs. Seems like some at points he's unplayable, but he comes in and he does what he needs to, and then they go from there, right? But yesterday, Dylan Hart and Wemby, my goodness with how Wemby played, but Dylan Harper, everybody forgets. Everybody's talking about Wemby, 41 points, over 40 minutes, 24 rebounds, just unreal. 8 for 9 from the free throw line from a 7'4" guy. That shot at the end, now 30 plus feet, similar to that Steph Curry shot, and where the bang bang twice by Mike Breen comes out, and um, that everybody's talking about that, but Dylan Harper as a rookie, his first playoff start, he comes in and he puts up 24 points and 11 rebounds. That's insane. And that's insane because he's a rookie, he's 6'3", but he came out and he got to his spot, got the shots he wanted, played in transition, played good defense. Mitch Johnson got mad at him, and rightfully so. He didn't box out, but he did really, really well yesterday. Vassell shot the ball well. Champagne shot the ball well. Would like to see, as I mentioned, Cornette come in and be more aggressive at the rim. Keldon played well, but he wasn't as aggressive going to the rim. He hit two big threes to keep that 5-point lead, 6-point lead. But when we get down to it, you look at Shea struggled in the first half, only 4 points. Jalen Williams and all these guys struggled a little bit, but then they kind of picked up in the second half. But now you're looking at, so Isaiah Hartenstein plays 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and, he's 2 points or 4 points. I think it was 2 points, but, the Thunder, that's an adjustment that they have to make. But everybody forgets that, the Spurs played without their starting point guard, who's the only person that had been in the playoffs, and Harrison Barnes. But Harrison Barnes is playing, garbage minutes too. He comes in maybe every now and then in the second and third quarter. I apologize. My dog outside is going crazy, but um, yeah, Harrison Barnes comes in and is playing, big games and stuff like that, and in big games, but he's coming in and playing, 5, 6, 7 minutes at the most. The game I went to, the Fiesta game in game one, he came in and Anthony Edwards hit two big threes, and the Spurs ended up losing by two because he got lost in defensive coverage. So it's unfortunate, right? But it's like, all right, it is what it is. So um, from that point, like I mentioned, yesterday Wemby just hits at three. It was a back and forth game. The Spurs had several 7, 8, 9 point leads. The Thunder only went up like 1 or 2 points at the most that I saw, maybe three. The game goes into overtime. Wemby, gets his shot blocked by Chet, and game goes into overtime, and um, that's that. That's what happens, and it's okay. The first overtime happens. It's back and forth. Spurs have a turnover. The Thunder take a 3-point lead, and then Wemby decides to take that shot, and that is a shot heard around the world. And that, to me, that solidifies Wemby as the best player in the world. And as I said, as if you're Wemby, you're like, yeah, Shea can have that MVP. I'm the defensive player of the year. Wemby will get his MVPs, but with Wemby, I love that he took it personal and he channeled his inner, Olajuwon when David Robinson won, and it's a redemption for the Spurs. That Spurs should have won that series back in the '90s, and Olajuwon completely dominated. And the David Robinson, one of the best defenders ever, struggled. And yeah, Shea's not guarding Wemby, but Wemby channeled his inner Olajuwon and just completely took over from the jump. He took over, and I love seeing it. As a Spurs fan, this is the one of the best games, if not the best game I've ever seen as a Spurs fan. You know, a young team that's not hasn't been there, that hasn't been in those moments, that was able to time after time and time again make good decisions, make big shots, make shots under pressure. Wemby, in that first overtime, making a shot to and then Shea gets to the basket. I think actually it's all right. This was in regulation, but Wemby hits a shot to go up two with 11 seconds left. He has a shot blocked, like I said, and then he makes that three to tie it, and the game goes into overtime, the second overtime. And in that second overtime, I think the Spurs kind of felt like we need to win this game, to keep our confidence at a high, and we still won. We'll still a game in Oklahoma City, and I think that the Spurs, what happened was they just turned it into an turn their game to another gear that we're used to seeing them than we were used to seeing them do all regular season and some of the postseason, to where the Spurs pace, so it's very hard for teams to match the pace that the Spurs play at. And yesterday, so Wemby was posting up. You're gonna throw Caruso on him and Williams and all these other guys. He's gonna post up. He's gonna catch it at the rim, and he's gonna dunk it in your face. And he's gonna look at you, and you're gonna look at him like, well, what else am I supposed to do? So I look for game two that Chet or Hardenstein or one of those guys is going to be guarding Wemby. I mean, the Caruso experiment, it worked to a certain extent. He scored 31 points because Wemby's trying to protect the rim, but I don't